What white supremacy constantly fights against is the full recognition of Black humanity, and that residue is absolutely everywhere.
You look at our country, we've never really dealt with issues around racial justice, and it continues to manifest itself in so many ways.
When Eric Gardner was choked to death, Father Jim Martin, in one of his many writings on it, ended a reflection by saying, when anyone says they can't breathe, they should be allowed to breathe. But then when we got to George Floyd and really saw the tragedy unfold over the course of nearly 9 minutes, he's calling out for his mother. People are being prevented from helping. What happened to George Floyd was not an accident. Choices were made. Choice was made not to lift the knee. And it's more than ignorance. There's an element of evil there that we really need to pay attention to. Otherwise, we're liable to reduce the problem to something that simply needs more education.
How do we get to a point where someone would make a choice to not lift a knee? I was thinking about something that Madison Gill had said. There is a soul sickness that's at work here.
The reason why I'm concerned about racism is because racism is a soul sickness. Racism is that interior dis-ease, that warping of the human spirit that enables us to create communities where some matter and some do not. We must begin by looking at racism because racism is our most central justice challenge.
More than ever, we have to speak up. Absolutely, we know we need to get together and pray, but how do we make sure that this is not superficial? How do we make sure that this is not purely performative?
We're going to call ourselves men and women for others. If we're going to live up to our Jesuit values that I as a Muslim can relate to, we have to go deeper. We have to make systematic changes throughout our university.
It's not going to be enough to simply infuse all of this with a new kind of spirituality. It's going to take some practical ideas and actions.
If you really don't understand it, you just won't see it, and there'll be no change. We have to understand what it is to change the culture.
Some people are simply not exposing themselves to what does it mean to experience life differently. There is a truth. There's a body of research. There's data. It's there. It's at our fingertips. We just have to open ourselves to it.
We have to open ourselves and recognize that we're all socialized within systems that perpetuate this unequal power in society, all of us, regardless of our color.
I'm discovering that I probably have more biases than I thought because I'm looking at it a little bit differently. But I'm also willing to speak up and talk truth to power in a way that I don't think I was willing. If we're silent, we're complicit. That's really hitting home to me right now.
White Americans, I think they're fearful of what does Black self-determination mean for them.
There are white folks who would rather live in a white dictatorship than a multiracial democracy. And the thought of sharing power, especially with Black people, they want no part of it.
We have to go places that we don't want to go, and we have to tell some very deep, uncomfortable truths. There is no way to have an adult, honest, intelligent conversation about race without making white people uncomfortable as a group, because race exists precisely to benefit one group and not another.
The fear of being called a racist paralyzes people. They choose to not do a thing because you might say the wrong word, you might do the wrong thing. We fear the conversation. We fear even going there. And so we leave it. It goes unsaid. And then I feel more alone, more abandoned, and less hope around what we can do for students.
Instead of having to move away from fear and anxiety, we have to lean in through it. I've had some experiences in classes where people have said words that were not supposed to be said or expressed thoughts that were not supposed to be spoken out loud. By approaching and moving through that thing that we've been moving away from, we can actually move through it and discover that on the other side of fear and anxiety, nothing happens. The world still turns on its axis.
This is how you decenter whiteness, not replace it, not overcome it.
There's a wide variety of people who don't feel like they want to be uncomfortable or not willing to, but the younger generation thrive off the feeling uncomfortable. They're actually listening.
As the board becomes more diverse, everyone feels more comfortable, especially the underrepresented people. We're called in our mission to go to the margins, and not with the kind of savior mentality. You go to communities to learn from communities, that they're the experts and they're your teachers, and you can develop reciprocal personal and institutional relationships that can transform.
So part of it's an expanding of imagination. I think sometimes our faculty didn't think that their work in this regard could extend maybe to their scholarly agenda, not just their teaching and advising with students.
It requires all of us to question our own training, the way that we've been socialized in our disciplines, the way that we've been trained to think about what questions are legitimate, what are our methods that we use, whose perspectives are valued.
We have students from all over, but they don't have representation. And some of them admit they're afraid to talk to their professors. They feel like there's cultural differences that cause miscommunication.
You're going to have some students who are coming from some backgrounds that will really challenge you because they're not always going to be able to understand their brilliance in their social and cultural self-presentation. You're going to have to suspend the way you think about how brilliance and excellence and potential is expressed. It would be wise of us to then list the skills associated with serving Black students as part of our expectations for the job. It's a skill.
For a diverse group of students, the faculty really isn't. And it's really hard for a lot of students to relate to their professors when they don't understand the struggles they're going through. They're not walking in their shoes.
If you had a very specific traumatic experience because of something like racial injustice or racism, is your professor going to be able to relate to you? How is your professor going to help you move forward from that?
There's so few faculty of color that we have to do everything when it comes to race. They always come to us and they know and they apologize, like, we're sorry, it's you again, because there's nobody else to do it.
Staff of color, even when they're hurting, they go along, getting up every day and having on the right mind, the right heart, because you have to give so much. That's a lot of emotive work that you have to be able to conjure up.
How are we valuing people's contributions? Service gets so underplayed in faculty evaluations, and then faculty of color who are disproportionately called upon and who want to because they're committed to their communities. And if it's not seen and not valued, then where does that leave us?
We are institutions that are part and parcel of exclusion in ways that we don't always know and don't always understand.
At every level, we can continually re-examine our criteria and determine whether or not they're working for us. If your institution is requiring the SAT or the ACT, re-examine that. Re-examine what it is that you're looking for.
Does your curriculum reflect the tenets of racial justice? Does it contain courses in literature and science and history and the rest of the humanities that have contributions by scholars from diverse backgrounds? All of these things, they're practical, they can be done, they don't require a huge amount of effort, and yet they're going to make a difference. I'm convinced of it.
We tend to look at demands or letters from different communities as problems or challenges that need to be faced and then move on to other things. The lack of any issues arising is seen as the desired status quo. I want to really use those documents as points of reflection, seeing, wow, what is a vision presented in this? What would it look like? How would we be different? What might the experience be for the whole community if more of this were to be enacted?
The concept that I always have for Jesuit universities, it's men and women for others. And it's cura personalis, so the care of the person or the care of the work. But it's always working toward the greater good. And I really think our job is to create an environment so people can live their life to their full potential, regardless. And so I think it's pretty remarkable that you think you could serve on a board at a Jesuit institution and not have this as one of your major topics of discussion.
I see the board becoming more diverse, bringing on more women, bringing on more people of color. I think sometimes they feel vulnerable to speak because sometimes they feel the board is just a bunch of old white men. That is changing for the good, and it will continue to change.
Racial justice is a modest relay race. And the goal is not for us to cross the finish line and to enter into the racial promised land. Our goal is to simply run the race and do our part so that we can pass the baton to those who will come after us.
I feel the magnitude of the work that we have to do, but I also feel within that a sense of commitment that there's something bigger than my own discomfort or the invitation to show courage and to risk.
I thought I knew what racial justice was. I really thought that I was doing well in the work of diversity and inclusion, and that I had the right level of passion and sympathy and commitment, but I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like a student again. I've learned so much, I'm anxious to continue learning.
It demands being open and honest about your position and your feelings. That's what it demands.
We can be wise, but we can also be bold. That will set us apart. We have to commit and trust that those challenges that come, as difficult as they may be, we'll be undeterred to maintain that commitment to support these students, to support the community and their success. There's no other way.
We're rebuilding an institution from within to help that mission and tradition be able to feel this moment.